What we've got here is no power steering pump, but it is a power steering box down the bottom, you can see there. So have a look down the side of here and you'll see just the top of that spout sticking out there. That's the top of a Mercedes A-Class power steering pump. You can see the pressure. There's the return line coming out of the back there. There's the stainless Teflon lined pressure hose down there. Not sure if you can see, a bit dusty down there on the old pump's been in the car for a bit, but you can see down there's the power steering box. Standard HQ power steering box. And if you come around the bottom here, I'll show you what's underneath. So can you see in the side over there? That's the back. That's the back of the A-Class Mercedes power steering pump, the bottom of it. You see a couple of Aeroflow fittings adapting it to the existing fitting that it has in it. So it says there Mercedes-Benz A16846600301. That's the pump number. This was a refurbished pump. You can buy them new now, pretty expensive. I think this was around $470, reconditioned or refurbished, whatever they call it. Got a bit of an issue with it. The issue we have is, I'll show you what the issue is. So to power that thing up, what you need is, you can see where the wire comes at the side down here. This has, in this wire loom here, it has probably an 8 gauge active and a neutral, and they run from the pump directly to the battery. And you have, there's got to be fused, sorry. These are 60 amp fuse. I think it runs at about 25-30 amp, but at normal running pressure. But at full steering lock, you can really load that pump up, and you can, if your power steering pump's hot, everything's hot, and you really get up against something and try and turn the steering wheel against a load, it really loads it up, and you could potentially pull 60 amps. So it's protecting the cable. The wiring runs through here behind the radiator. You can see this side, I've just got it sort of temporarily loomed up here. Down the bottom over there, you'll see, I'll put this torch over here so you can see what's going on. You can see down here, instead of putting a 60 amp fuse or 70 amp fuse it actually asked for, what I've got is I put a 70 amp breaker in there. So this wire, you can see this small wire, it attaches directly to the back of the alternator. So when the car's not running and the pump just sees 12 volts, it's not supposed to start up. But when the engine's running and the pump sees 13.5 or above 13 volts coming out of that alternator, it's supposed to activate the pump. Here's the problem I have. When I put that up there, when I flick this breaker on, you can see down here. So the reason I put a breaker in it was, it could be in the middle of nowhere, something could go wrong with your power steering, could overheat. It's there to protect the pump and protect the cables, and the breaker trips off. The breaker trips off, you can let it cool down and flick it back on. Imagine trying to find a 70 amp or 60 amp breaker in the middle of nowhere to try and get the steering back in the car. So anyway, this is actually isolating the power. So if I flick this back on, that pump's not supposed to start until the engine's running. But hear that? Pump started up straight away as soon as I put it on. That battery only has 12 volts, and I tested it. The pump's not supposed to actually run until that engine's actually running. The other issue we have is it's quite noisy. You can hear it. If I get right down near it with the camera, I mean, you can't feel it, you can't hear it. It's on some pretty good rubber isolators, and it's in a decent metal bracket below that we had welded up just to support it underneath the wheel arch. And it's out of the It's out of the motion of the front wheel. So when you do full lock, it misses that box, so it doesn't actually hit it. So yeah, that it's still quite noisy. It's on rubber isolators too, but it works. It works really well. You can hear now there's no engine running, just that pump running off 12 volts. If I that's obviously the tyres screeching on the rubber floor. That's 2 fingers. That's 2 fingers on the steering wheel turning that. It turns really easy. Good thing about it is running at that speed there. It's a nice comfortable speed. You feel a little bit of load on the steering wheel. You don't feel, it's not too free, it's not too easy. Again, at the moment, what I've got to do to turn that, to stop it running is to, let me just zoom in a little bit there. There's the breaker. If I just flick it, it turns the breaker off, pump stops. So inside those power steering pumps, they have a couple of transistors in there. There's 3 little transistors inside it there, which I guess regulate that that voltage going to it. It's in this little J box under the bottom. So in this J box under here, see that little J box right on the front there, this thing here. So that J box there, it if you take the front of it off, you can see the 3 wires going into it. See those 3 wires going to the top there. There's the, let's get it about there somewhere so you can see it. There you go. See how you can see the red active, the brown, which is the neutral, and the blue is the trigger wire. And that trigger wire is the one that's going to the back of the alternator. So inside that box there are 3 little transistors, and apparently they just burn out and blow up for no particular reason. So what I'm going to have to do now is either pay another $500 for another pump, because we've had this one for several months and I'm pretty sure they're not going to warrant it because it's never been started in the car till yesterday. But we'll test it out. If they give us a new pump, we'll swap it out. If they don't, the alternative is I'm going to run a relay off of the ignition, and I'll have the relay connected up to that trigger wire down here. And then when I crank it, because you can hear the pump runs under no load when it first starts. Just freewheels, so it's not pulling any amps, and then you hear it load up, so potentially gives enough time to crank the engine under no load of that pump, because that thing's pulling 30 amps. If the engine's hot, there's 2 thermo fans down here as well. They're pulling 25 amps each. What else we got? We've got an air conditioner in the car. Not sure the air conditioner's on like a 20 or 25 amp fuse as well. If that thing's on and running, geez, we're pulling some power. So potentially we may have to get a bigger output alternator, maybe a 140 amp alternator. I think this is like a 110 or a 120 to run all these extra accessories on it. So I'll keep you informed. I'll let you know what's happening with it. But for now, yeah, really simple. If you want to install them in the car, they're quite noisy. I'm suggesting maybe you can stick that thing in the boot and put a bit of insulation around it, try and quieten the thing down, get on some good rubber insulators, and then run the hoses to the front of the car from the back. It's quite a long run. Obviously more load on the pump again, but that's a lot of noise out here. If you're gonna turn your car on, hopefully I've got a gear drive on here, right? I mean a Gilmer belt on here, so hopefully that overrides this noise. We'll see what happens, eh? Anyway, anyone's interested in knowing more about it, let me know. To install it is really simple. You just got to make yourself a bracket, work out where you're going to put it. Like I said, we hid this one under the guard. You can see these bolts here, that bolt there are existing bolts that hold the front radiator support to the inner guard. That bolt there is a new bolt which is holding the bracket. So those three bolts hold the metal box that holds this, and that metal box is bolted up tight up against the body of the car. See if I can show you more underneath here. There you go, you can see You can see there the bottom of the pump on that rubber insulator or isolator. May need to take it back out and drill that hole a bit more clearance around the bottom of that aluminium lug. Maybe it's touching the frame too hard and making a buzzing noise in the steel, but we'll work that out anyway. Yeah, so that's how it's wired up. 2 wires to the battery. That's how it's triggered. That one blue wire that runs to the back of the alternator. I've got it in red because I had to cut it back there, solder a new piece in it, and extend it round to here. Obviously, it's come out of a Mercedes, which has a wiring loom that suits it. And yeah, it comes to the back of the alternator. You can see on the back of the alternator down here. Hope there's enough light there. This is a single wire alternator. There may be a few wires going to it, but single wire. This brown one here goes to my battery warning light in the dash, and this red wire, this heavy red wire here, is probably 8 gauge, probably 4 gauge, runs directly to the back of the alternator. So we've got this trigger wire on here. This other red wire here runs off and goes to where it goes down to the starter motor. From there down to the starter, as well as this main heavy wire here that comes from the battery. I've tried to keep this as neat as possible. It's pretty hard when you're running some heavy gauge wires here. Might get a bit of sleeve or something put over these cables. We get a bit of sleeve put over these. Got a few grounds. Ground from the battery. You can see a ground from the battery to the chassis. A ground to the firewall, which you can see around the back here. And there's grounded to the motor. It's grounded everywhere, so we don't get any bad ground issues. Again, really close to getting this thing fired up. Air conditioning's hooked up and running like I showed you in the other video. Power steering's now hooked up and running. Battery's all connected, all wiring internally is done, all dash wiring's finished. Now I've got the power steering sorted. I'm going to get the front of the car back up on the ramps. Get under the car, do a final check over all the hoses, clamps and bolts and stuff. Make sure it's right, put some fuel in the car. Call Dave, the father-in-law, over. Like I told you, it's his car. Obviously he wants to be here when we give it its first kick, whether it starts or not, and then we'll problem solve from there. Alright, thanks again for watching. Again, if you like what I'm doing here, hit the subscribe button, like the video, hit the like button. If you've got any mates that are interested in doing some sort of mods like this, let them in on the YouTube channel. Share the video to them, and yeah, I'll keep pumping them out as long as you guys keep liking them. All right, thanks for watching. See you later.